Kedem grape juice. It's all about the grapes.
Hashem has had enough. He's had it with the Mitzrim and the way they've tormented the Jewish people. And so he decides to bring plagues, dung, blood, tzvardeya, frogs, kinim, lice. Let's stop for a moment at the frogs. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Medrash that tells us that there was one very big frog. And that's where all the other frogs came from. In fact, every time the Egyptians beat this frog, more frogs came out of its mouth. So the question arises, why keep beating the frog? Why not stop? And the answer is they were so frustrated, they were so angry, they couldn't stop. And so they kept on hitting the frog, and more and more frogs came. The question we need to ask ourselves is, we've probably been there. That moment of frustration and anger when we can no longer stop ourselves. We're out of control. So what do we do to stop? And the answer is you need a practice. You need to practice restraint. You need to practice self-control. Listen to the following story, it's incredible. There was a Rebbe teaching in a school long before the days of cell phones. And he goes out of his classroom for a minute and he says to the principal, if you don't mind, I really need to make an important phone call. Well, the principal wasn't thrilled, but he says, listen, if it's important, go ahead and make the call. And the principal's office was right next to the classroom. And he hears the Rebbe call and he asks his wife, I know it's right before Pesach and you're cleaning, I'm just curious, did you clean out my closet yet? Oh, you did? Okay, fine, no, great, no problem. And he hangs up the phone. And he walks back into the classroom and the principal's a little frustrated. Really, that's the important call? You had to call your wife and ask her if she cleaned out the closet? So he called over the teacher and he asked him, what is it exactly that was so important that you had to make that phone call in the middle of class? And this is what the Rebbe answered. He said, you know, I'm making a wedding soon and I'm drowning in bills. I can't afford it. So I borrowed $10,000 cash. And I asked the person not to say anything to my wife, and I didn't tell her, because I don't want her to worry. And I put the envelope into the jacket pocket at the end of the closet. I figured my wife would never know. This morning while I'm teaching, I realized Pesach is soon. My wife might clean out the closet. And the principal looks at the Rebbe and he says, and she threw out the jacket? He said, you heard the conversation. And you didn't get upset? He says, I want to tell you something. I have a Rebbe. And when I was a little kid, he taught me something very, very important. He taught me one phrase, one line. And the line is, Was denn, ob nicht vor der Minute? What then, if not for this moment in time? We train our whole lives for that one moment that will arise, and that's when we need to meet the challenge. And so my whole life, I've been training for this moment. What's going to happen when I lose $10,000 and I'm faced with the challenge of saying something insensitive to my wife who knew nothing about it? And it was at that moment that I employed my Rebbe's strategy. Was denn ob nicht vor der Minute? What then if not for this moment in time? The moment's going to come, but we have to train. We have to work on ourselves, practice restraint. And when the moment arrives, you'll be ready for it.